Hi, everyone. I'm Ed Garsten, and welcome to episode 137 of Tales from the Beat, where we look at news and PR from both sides of the scrimmage line. And my guest this time is Christopher Barger, is a guy described as a master communicator, a storyteller, executive counselor at major corporations that include General Motors, Owens Corning, SME, and a whole bunch more. Hey, Chris, how are you?
I'm doing well, Ed. Thanks for having me on the show.
You bet, you bet. Where are you right now, as far as what you're doing and where you are?
I am uh, in between positions and looking for my next opportunity, but I'm also launching a new podcast that I'm hoping to make as successful as Tales from the Beat.
Yeah, yeah, actually, I took a look at it, called M Dash, right? Is that the
Yep, the M-Dash Report. Yep.
so why don't we're talking about it. Let's talk about it for a second, then we'll get into some real thorny issues right now
Sure.
regarding journalism, PR, communications all around. But what's it all about?
The M-Dash Report, well, to start, my co-host Arthur Baker and I were only introduced in December by our mutual mentor, and within 10 minutes of our first conversation on Meet, we were realizing, boy, we've got a rapport here that we should do a podcast. It literally was something we said in our first conversation. And what we've decided to do is bring a sports desk, rapid fire energy to communications, PR, marketing issues.
Yeah.
So we handle anywhere from 10 to 15 concepts, news items, things that are happening and just like PTI on ESPN, we've
Yeah.
got 90 seconds to give, this is my take. Sometimes we argue with each other. We have
Yeah.
opposite takes,
Right. Yeah.
but that's the fun of it. There are a lot of really good communications and public relations and journalism podcasts out there. We're hoping to break through with that energy and that different approach to covering some of the issues that we talk about.
Yeah, no, I watched it, and there's definitely a lot of energy and a lot of humor and a
Yep.
lot of great points, a lot of great insight from you guys. So best of luck with it.
Thank
It's
you.
launching a podcast is always well, you just you know how it is. There's hundreds of thousands, I think, of podcasts out there right now, and you just hope that you have something that will break through. And I think you guys have what it takes. It really is fun. It's a good, fun, worthwhile watch and
Well,
listen.
thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
You bet, you bet. I definitely, I think I hit the subscribe button already, so
Awesome. Well, thank you.
that's cool. Yeah, no, I
Very
believe me,
cool.
I feel your pain. I know how this works. I'm 3.5 years into this, and it's let's just say it's a constant work in progress, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah,
It's a lot
absolutely.
of
All
fun.
the best projects are constant works in progress anyway.
Actually, yeah, I mean, it's not work. It's just fun because this stuff is fun to talk about. So
Right.
why don't we just dive right in? The big story, of course, in the last few days is what happened at the White House Correspondents Association dinner, and what struck me, and I'm wondering how much of it you watch, is just the way this story was covered because it was a totally of the moment type of coverage. And
Right.
what were your impressions of it?
I think, Ed, that there's four distinct stories that are going on here, and I'm not sure that the media has kind of separated them out or handled all of them just quite yet.
Yeah,
There's still, like you said, they were at the center of the storm, so there's a lot for them to process.
right.
The first is just the security story. How does somebody check into the same hotel as the president of the United States,
Yeah,
walk down 10 flights of stairs, and get within feet of 2,600 people, including the
right.
president and the vice president?
Yeah,
There is a serious security story to be told there. And that is something that I think we're going to see play out over the next couple of
for
days. The
sure.
Secret Service is going to find themselves under the uncomfortable kind of scrutiny that they
Yeah,
probably deserve for this incident.
yeah,
The second, I think, is the political violence story. This is now the third incident that involved Donald Trump.
mhm,
This is coming on the heels of a Minnesota lawmaker being assassinated, and we've got a real political violence problem in the United States of America,
yeah,
and that's going to be something that they have to cover. But I think the third one is most interesting for journalists, and that's how journalists cover themselves, right? They're at the center of this. It happened at their event. It's the
Hmm.
very event that sort of acknowledges the relationship between press and power,
Yeah.
and they're right in the middle of it. And now President Trump was on 60 Minutes a day
Right.
later
Yeah.
criticizing the media.
Yes.
How do you cover a story when you're being criticized and when you are at the center of it? And then the fourth is really unfortunate, but I think it's
Yeah.
it's something we have to look at is how quickly conspiracy theories spread and
Yes.
how quick some were to label this a staged event.
Yeah.
Just like there have been other previous incidents on both sides of the aisle that have been labeled stage,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and we've got to reckon with where we are as a country that we're so quick to not trust anything anymore. So I think the press has got to cover all four of those angles at
Yeah.
some point once the smoke is cleared.
Yeah. I just happened to stumble on it. I was watching the baseball game, and between innings, I said, "Oh, I think I'll flip to CNN and see what's going on at the dinner." And then instead of a shot of the stages, people on the floor, and of course, there's that one guy eating a salad who didn't, nothing seemed to phase him. But to hear that a noise, and first they thought it was dishes falling, right, a catering cart or something like that, and you hope that's all it was, and then you hear that it was actually shots fired, and hearing Wolf Blitzer talk about him being feet away from the shots and losing his shoe as they threw him to the floor and all this stuff. So yeah, I kind of stumbled upon it, and I thought it was sort of masterful. I watched Brian, what's his name, Stelter,
Yeah, Brian
yeah,
Stelter. Yeah.
basically covering it through FaceTime with his phone and holding his phone up. And I thought it was sort of a masterful job of covering an event about something that you're part of in a very objective way.
Right.
About all of a sudden drawing that line that you must draw between a reporter and a participant. And so, I mean, I'm just wondering how you perceive that as far as how the reporters played their role within a story that they were actually part of.
I think to use your phrase, they did a masterful job. It takes a certain amount of professionalism, a high degree of professionalism,
Yeah,
when you have been literally that close to the shots being fired
yeah,
to stand back and objectively report on what's happening and what you're seeing. Rather than being a participant, I guess I kind of liken it to war correspondence.
yeah,
You can sometimes be right in the danger zone and
sure.
still have to report objectively. So I thought it spoke well of the journalists who were in attendance. I thought
Yeah.
that they were able to draw that line and report on what they were observing.
Yeah. So, beyond that, I mean, I'm looking at the technology and I instantly thought about because I worked for CNN for 20 years in
Right.
the 80s and 90s when there were no such thing as cell phones or really much of the internet. I remember covering a trial in Tennessee in 1986. There was going to be a verdict and there was no way to get the verdict out. There was one payphone in the hallway
Oh no.
of the of this little courthouse, and there was a hardware store across the street from the courthouse. And knowing that, because I'd been to the courthouse before, I paid the guy $20. I said, when I come rushing here with my pad, looking like my pants are on fire, that phone's mine. I'm going to get. And that's the only way I was able to file my report. And you say, wow, back in those days, how would something like this have been reported? Well, I know how people be fighting for a payphone or somehow
Right.
getting a messenger out. But Chris, in the larger point that you mentioned earlier, just about credibility of reporting, which really kind of brings us to the bigger picture here and beyond the dinner, is how are people really supposed to believe what they're seeing and hearing now, given that we're getting so many sources of information on our phones, on our
Right.
laptop, wherever. How, I mean, what, I really struggle with the answer because it used to be, well, there's journalists, trained
Right.
journalists that are giving you this information. Now everyone's the media.
And I think we've lost something very important. I recognize that the internet and social media was supposed to democratize information. It was supposed
Hmm.
to bring down the walls a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think we've really, as a society, lost sight of what can be credible. And when you have somebody with an opinion who's as able to get their
Yeah.
opinion out as quickly as a journalist who was at the dinner,
Hmm.
that I mourn the loss of the gatekeeping aspect of
Yeah.
journalism a little bit. I really think we've lost something. How people are supposed to determine what's credible,
Yeah.
I would love to believe that it's,
Yeah.
that it's having a journalistic cred from, or a journalistic badge that you're at the White House with. I
Yeah.
wish that were
Hmm.
still the standard, but it's not. And I think, unfortunately, the polarization of the country has come into our media sources or our information sources. We
Yeah.
only, as a larger society, we only take information from the sources that we want.
Right.
And that is another thing that, journalism used to be the definitive objective. This is what happened. And
Yes.
we've lost that. It's all through political prisms at this point.
You're so right, Chris, because it's become just an echo chamber. People don't want that objectivity, at least
Right.
in my heart. In my, having done this for really 50 years or more, I hate to believe that people don't want objectivity anymore.
Right.
But I mean, there's somebody out there has got to want it. And but you see that when a news organization tries to play it down the middle, they lose either their ratings or their audience or their
Right.
subscriptions or advertising. And I mean, is this spilt milk? Can we not get this back in the bottle again? Is it just
I
too far gone?
I'm pessimistic about our ability to get everything back in the bottle. I have a difficult time seeing people gravitate toward objectivity at this point,
Yeah,
because we are so political positions or political party affiliation used to be just a part of who we, a small part of who we were, and there were other. Now
yes.
it's part of our identity on all sides. You are either a MAGA or anti-MAGA. You are Republican or Democrat,
Yeah,
and that has become so much a part of our identity. I have a
yes.
hard time believing that people, like you said, when a media outlet tries to play it down the middle, they lose one side or the other. You
Yeah,
know, we are looking for information. We being the collective, we are
sure.
looking for information that reinforces our biases. And I don't know how you practice objective journalism in that environment. You do the best you can, and
Yeah.
try to try to recognize that somebody's going to be unhappy with whatever you're doing.
Yeah, it's tough, I know in the people now look at CNN, MS now, as the liberal and Fox and the other stuff is on the right. And I can recall that in the 1988 Democratic Convention was held actually next door to CNN in Atlanta, in the
In
old
Atlanta,
Omni Coliseum. And I had a job as a supervising producer then, which is like a shift supervisor. And I'd get calls from viewers and they go, you're Republican. Next call would be, you're a Democrat. And I loved it because no one knew what the hell we were, which was good because we were nothing. We
right,
were right down the middle. And then, once Fox came on and they took the model of conservative talk radio, basically, is what their whole model is based on. The game changed, and that's when people started saying, I want to watch and listen to what I believe in.
right.
And now, all news organizations seem to have to take a stand that neutral. Uh, I mean, who, if you had to say, oh, who's neutral now? No,
I
nobody.
it's pretty tough to find a
Yeah.
and I've seen the studies where they kind of map out on the spectrum where every
Yeah.
news outlet. I generally will look at the AP or Reuters as
Yeah.
close to neutral and down the middle as you can get. But
Yes.
you're right. More broadly speaking,
Hmm.
everybody's been sort of forced to pick a side, and I do think we've lost something as a society when that's happened. I
Yeah.
greatly value the role that journalism used to play, and I wish we could still see that.
Yeah. Yeah. I wish we could too. So let's look at some other issues related to that as we sort of branch out here and looking at sort of both sides as we do here on the podcast of the scrimmage line. So you've been a communicator, corporate communicator, advisor to executives. So as you're looking at this situation that we're in now as a communicator representing an entity, what's then, Chris, what's your thought process as to how do you effectively get your message out? So regardless of somebody's whether political or philosophical
Right.
stance, you're gonna hit home.
If I had the answer to that, I wouldn't be between jobs, Ed.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
you just the well, first of all, you just work on trying to be as objective as possible.
Yeah.
You want to give honest information, and PR people have never been the paragon of trust.
Yeah.
You work to be a trustworthy source as a PR person, as a communicator, but there's always that societal, oh, that's just spin, that's just PR,
Hmm.
so that we've always kind of had to deal with being discounted a little bit. Where
Yes.
it comes down to recognizing the environment, I will always tell a C-suite leader, you've got to be comfortable with and understand what your organizational values are and
Hmm.
stay true to them,
Yeah.
recognizing that there's going to be some people don't like it, whether we're talking DEI stance or other social issue stances,
Hmm.
sustainability, whatever it is,
Yeah.
you're going to make somebody unhappy no matter what. So
Yeah.
what you need to do is truly understand and be willing to stick by your organizational values, because the one thing that kills a story and kills your credibility more than anything else is inconsistency.
Yeah.
If you are saying one thing and issuing sustainability reports, for example, saying that you're
Yes.
committed to the environment, and then public stances are in favor of data centers somewhere, well, that's an inconsistency that people pick up on.
Right.
So I think that just as you're practicing as a PR person, that
Hmm.
consistency is something that you really have to look for, recognizing that there's going to be criticism and some people who don't like the message, but at least we're staying consistent. We are who we say we are,
Sure.
and that's the best that you can do in this environment.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard. I know that in my experience, having been on the other side at an automaker, are you finding then that C-suite management, especially CEOs, do they find the communications department, PR, I'll say, useful, and are they accepting the counsel from you as an expert at
Right.
communicating, or are they saying, this is inconvenient to me. I just want to say what I want to say.
It depends on the organization that you're in, and I've been in both, and
Hmm.
and sometimes in the same company where where,
Yeah.
where there are different approaches depending on the leader.
Hmm.
The good ones recognize that communications is no longer about just write the press release and get this, get me an interview with the reporter. Now we are in when the relationship is healthy, we are business counselors. We have to be as versed in business strategy
Yeah.
as the CFO. We have
Hmm.
to. And if we are, and the C-suite leader trusts us as a business leader, then they're going to listen to us more effectively when we're just saying you should say this, or here's the right way to go out with this message.
Right.
You also get, again, sometimes in the same company, executives who just don't want to hear it, who still see communications
Hmm.
as just the press release people. And
Yeah.
there's even that level of disrespect of, well, anybody can write, anybody
Oh,
can
sure.
talk. I don't know why I need you.
Yeah. Yeah.
We you still see that sometimes.
Uh,
So it
yeah.
really depends on the organization, but I do think in the healthiest relationships, we are business strategists and business counselors as
Hmm.
much as communication responsibility on us as communicators too,
Yeah.
to learn the business.
You just hope that they would trust you. I mean, that's why you're there in the first place and being paid, and why there is such a job.
Right.
And I remember instances where a CEO actually asked me, "Should I do this conference?" And I said, of course. Oh, they're just going to ask hard questions anyway. It's just going to piss me off." I go, "Well, sorry, but
Yeah.
too bad, you know."
Well,
Um,
and the answer to that is if
yeah,
you don't answer the hard questions, they will in a vacuum make up their own answers and you lose
yes,
control of the story.
absolutely. Well, I mean, this particular guy wanted us to just put the canned quotes in a news release, and I said, no respectful, no, no real journalist is going to. We know it's a canned quote that you
Yep.
never said that. You might have okayed it, but you didn't say it, and you don't even mean it.
Right.
But stuff like that, which then takes me to the next part. All right, so we're going to communicate on behalf of our entity, wherever we're working. Now we've seen Washington Post, I mean, so many news organizations, they've decimated their staff's budget cuts. There just aren't that many journalists around as there were, so-called journalists. Uh,
Right.
so how does that affect your strategy about how to approach pitching a story and getting the message out when there's so many fewer journalists to go to?
Well, there are fewer journalists to go to, and they're wearing far more hats than they used to. They are their own editor. They probably have their own Substack someplace where they're trying
Mhm.
to drum up interest in their day job, as it
Yeah,
were. Um, so it means that we have, as a PR person, I have less time to, if I haven't grabbed you in the first sentence of a pitch, I'm not
right.
going to get you. You've got
Mm,
too many other things to do.
sure.
You are looking for something that is going to generate traffic. And if
Mhm.
I haven't gotten you in the first sentence, it used to be I could write a good two-paragraph pitch,
Yeah.
give some context to the story, and help you understand why this is a good story to cover. I've got one line now. I've got one line to get your attention, and
Hmm.
it's the same thing with PR people.
Yeah.
We're dealing with that shortened attention span and the busyness of the reporters that we're working
Hmm.
with, and in the same sense that journalists have to almost write headlines that are designed to generate clicks, and
Yes.
PR people are in the same way. We've got to write one sentence that's designed to generate a click from you. So that's been the hardest adjustment for many of us is
Yeah.
we like nuance, we like context, we like to tell the full story because that's what we
Yes.
are as communicators. We're
Hmm.
storytellers,
Yeah.
and you've got one sentence to tell that story now. It makes you get really good really fast, or you're not effective anymore.
It is tricky, and I mean, and then how much is AI's role in search results affected really in how you think and how you, like you say, how you word your one line that you have. I mean, thinking that that's how people are getting to stuff now.
Well, that's how I can. My hope is as a communicator, and it's especially important in the AI world now because
Yeah.
earned media is actually in an ironic way, given everything we've just been talking about. Earned media is the credibility in a search at
Hmm.
this point. If I get you with that one sentence and you write a story for CNN.com,
Yeah.
and now that shows, that's what the AI turns up when it's doing its crawl. That's credibility from my perspective. That's credibility that goes. So it's ironic
Yeah.
that media that have given all that we've just talked about the credibility of the media, the credibility of PR people.
Yeah.
Earned media is more important than it's been in 30 years for the credibility of your story as a communications person.
That's a great point. I know when I contribute to Forbes.com, and in our back end we have a little top hat, a top hat and a wand, and when you click it, it'll tell you if you're optimized for AI and SEO, if someone's going to find your how well you've worded your headline. And I think I spend more
Right.
time on my headline than I do on my story because it just drives me crazy. It's just
That's got
I'm
to
an old
be,
dog here. I got to learn a new trick.
yeah, yeah. I was going to say that's got to be hard for a career journalist in recognizing that you've just got to work on that headline, and that's going to be the
Yeah.
more important thing than the story itself.
Well, it's almost as difficult as when when I started working at CNN. They were the first, I think, or one of the first computerized newsrooms in 1981, and I had to go from using a typewriter to a computer. That was a big, that was almost as big a shock. I had nothing to throw. I was used to throwing that carriage or hitting the return button. I kind of missed that. I missed the sound of the clackety clack.
Yeah.
But it's a new world we're in. I know that for a while, and maybe still that whole, and I'm sure you know this peso method, right? The paid,
Yep.
earn, shared, own, paid, earn. What was it? I
Paid
forget.
and shared owned. Yep.
Oh yeah, was the model integrated communications? I mean, is that still valid even today?
Absolutely. It's more valid. And I had the privilege of working for Ginny Dietrich for a little while, and Ginny is the person who invented the peso model and is continuing
Hmm.
to adapt it for AI.
Yeah.
It's more important than ever. It just means that you sort of shift the order in which you attack the, owned was always the first part of the peso model. You had to have your
Yeah.
own media, and maybe a little less so now. Maybe the earned
Yeah.
is more important
Yeah.
because the AI is going to find that. And you know
Mm.
even back in the pre-AI era, when you were looking for a Google search, the first 12 things came up. Well, your owned content was going to drive how highly you showed up in that search.
Right.
Now 60% of searches never involve a click
Yeah.
because the AI gives that little summary at the very front, and that's all.
Yes.
So your job as a communications person is to get your company's perspective, get your company's information to
Yeah.
show up in that search, which is why, again, earned is so much more important. The peso model is absolutely still valid.
Hmm.
You just shift a little bit of the order on what you focus on first.
Sure, sure. I mean, it's amazing. A couple of months ago, I interviewed a gentleman from a PR firm in Idaho who actually has a money back guarantee that he'll increase your standing in AI search.
Huh.
And he said he's paid it off once. Well, that was back in I think in February I spoke with. I don't know if he's had to pay it anymore since, but
That's an interesting approach.
yeah.
You know, I would be loath to guarantee anything, but maybe he's got a method that he finds foolproof and wouldn't have to give it back very often.
Yeah, he had his methods. I mean, it was pretty convincing, but it was pretty cool to hear about. Chris, I'm going to let you go, but let's plug the podcast one more time that
Sure.
you and your partners have launched. It's excellent, and people should listen to it. It's called
The M Dash Report, and you can
M.
find us on Spotify, on YouTube, and on Apple Podcasts.
Awesome. Yeah, everyone give it a listen and a watch if you can. It's fun, it's smart, it's good. And they've got me as a subscriber now too. Chris Barger, thanks so much. What a great discussion. I really appreciate you taking the time and come here on Tales of the Beat. And thank you all for listening or watching. We hope you'll subscribe, comment, share, do all the stuff you're supposed to do with podcasts, especially enjoy it.
Especially this one.
Oh, thank you very, very much. We just hoping to inform and give folks something enjoyable and useful to spend their time with. Thanks everybody for joining us in this episode of Tales from the Beat. I'm Ed Garsten, and I'll be back soon with more tales. Take care.